Welcome. My name is Nikki Lefebvre and I'm the director of the Natick Historical Society. We were established in 1870 and today we remain an independent nonprofit that receives no public funds. We thrive on the support of our community members, and I want to extend my thanks to all of our supporters whose generosity makes programs like these possible. Thank you so much. On March 24th, 2021, we were delighted to have David Lavalley of the Center for Arts in Natick, best known to all of us as TCAN. David's talk was the first in our Meet Our Neighbors series, which aims to shine a light on the many cultural, educational service and other organizations that have shaped Natick over time in the past, in the present, and into the future. David is the executive director of the Center for Arts in Natick, the largest performing arts organization in the Metro West region. David's tenure at TCAN began in 2004 when, while serving as an active TCAN volunteer, he was recruited to replace its founding director. This month, David celebrated his 17th anniversary with the organization. Prior to joining TCAN, David held several senior management positions at Digital Equipment Corporation, including Director of Marketing and Operations for its personal computer and storage systems business units. David's passion for the arts began early in life as an actor in community theater, a guitarist in several rock bands, and a studio session vocalist on a number of ads, jingles, and commercials heard throughout New England on television and radio in the 1980s. Since 2004, under David's leadership, TCAN has grown to 3 times its original size, completed a successful capital campaign to add a digital cinema room, and retired its original mortgage debt of $750,000 9 years early. We were thrilled to have David join us on March 24th, and we learned a lot about TCAN. We hope you do too. If you enjoy this recording, I encourage you to consider supporting the Natick Historical Society, and you can do this on our website, www.natickhistoricalsociety.org. And while you're on our website, I also encourage you to please check out our upcoming events, because there's always something new to learn about our shared past. And now I'll turn it over to David. Thank you.
I'm going to share my screen. And I have some slides and pictures that I hope you'll find interesting and fun. I do want to kind of preface this entire presentation by saying that, TCAN has been around now for 24 years. And there are so many people who have helped make TCAN what it is today. So many volunteers and board members and members of the staff, so many donors who contributed so much to make this possible. I'm not going to be able to cover and recognize every one of those people tonight. So to those folks who are on the call tonight, please know in my heart, I'm so grateful to all of you for making this possible. It took a village. There we go. So TCAN's mission, we've changed the language a bit over time, but essentially the mission has really been about access and the power of the arts to transform individuals and transform communities. We believe as an organization that the arts are essential to a healthy community and to a complete life. And so we've strived to present programs that increase opportunities for people to enjoy the arts and celebrate the arts in our region, regardless of their backgrounds, their economic ability. So we're trying to make it possible for everyone to enjoy the arts and to enjoy the benefit of the arts. Just to introduce briefly our current organization and our current board members, I'm presenting them for you here. A lot of folks who come to events at TCAN always look at the short list of staff members that we have and wonder how we can do what we do with so few people. And it is really only made possible by the fact that we have so many volunteers who are contributing their time and effort to to make all of this possible. TCAN at any point in time, certainly pre-COVID, had over 100 volunteers who were active as members of the board, presenting or organizing community programs, box office volunteers. Johanna, I think you're on the call, so there's a shout out to you. Marketing and outreach volunteers, event staff, Jenny Adams, there's a little shout out to you. Fundraising or folks who help with our membership program and with our annual gala. So it does take a large number of folks to make this possible. Not all of them are from Natick. TCAN is very much a regional organization, and we are very fortunate to have a number of volunteers who support us from all throughout Metro West. Just to kind of introduce, give you a sense of the scale of TCAN now, this bar chart shows you the number of ticketed patrons in our recent history. This chart shows from 2007 to 2017. If you saw 2018 and 19, which I didn't have time to update the chart, you'd see that we exceeded 30,000 patrons in 2019. That dip in 2016 was because we were closed for a while because of a big renovation. But I hope you can see that we had great momentum and have great momentum in the organization. This map of Massachusetts shows you all those communities where we have TCAN members, patrons who make a contribution to further our efforts and our programs. And you can see the wide geographic dispersion of those members. And it says something about how our voice is carrying beyond Natick and to the region and beyond. And so it's something that we're very proud of. So the approach I'm going to take in this presentation is first to do a little bit of a history lesson. And I think it'll give you some context to in which you can then see where TCAN is now and better appreciate the impact that we've had on the community. So for the first slide, I'm going to set the Wayback Machine way back to the 1800s. This is Natick Center back in 1873. And so you can see the Clark block, which all of you who live in Natick are, I'm sure, familiar with, is a very different building. This is, a lot of this was a wood construction. You can see it's a slightly different architecture than the current Clark block building that occupies the entire city block. This was our town center and Natick, for Natick back in 1873. I'm sure most of you are familiar, however, with the tragic fire that happened in 1874. This is the tragic aftermath of that fire. So in 1874, there wasn't much left of Natick Center. And, you know, I can't imagine the devastation and the pain that the people in the town must have suffered to see their treasured town center burnt to the ground. And I guess my only connection to that is that the building of the firehouse that we're currently in 1875 was the result of a resilient group of people who refused to go away. You know, they were committed to staying and quickly set about to rebuild this town that they loved so much. This is the firehouse back in the 1875, 78 period. You can see that at that point, this was a state of the art firehouse. It had horse-drawn fire trucks. The harnesses for the horses would drop down on the horses, who were all behind these four wooden fire doors. And then they would exit to meet a fire. Another point about this building is the tower, this hose drying tower with an ornamental cupola on top of it. That hose drying tower was actually used for drying fire hoses after they were used. And that cupola was mounted and could be seen from anywhere in Natick Center. You notice that there's a dirt street, that the roads aren't paved at that point. And I'm always reminded that this was back in 1874, 75, only 10 years after the Civil War ended. So this was Natick, and this was our facility back at that time. Here's another view of the building, and again you can see the cupola and these 4 fire doors in the rebuilt Natick Center, again with the dirt road. So now we're going to flash forward all the way to the early 1990s. And just to give you a little bit of context here, this is more than 100 years later. And, you know, in 1984, you're probably all familiar with Doug Flutie making his famous, Hail Mary pass to beat Miami as when he played for Boston College in 1984. Back then, in the early 80s, the late 80s, the 90s, this was a football town. This was very much part of our culture. And I think the spirit of our community had it at its heart, this whole idea of the home of champions. That whole home of champions idea, many of you know, was really rooted in the Natick firemen who won the hook and ladder competition. Well, they were operating out of that firehouse. So that was Natick, the spirit of Natick around the 80s. So around 1997, a group of arts lovers, music lovers, led by the founding director of TCAN, Michael Moran, opened up what was the first version of the Center for Arts in Natick. This was located in 31 Main Street, which is now Brandt's Jewelers. So if you go downtown in Natick and see Brandt's Jewelers and walk around in that very small jewelry store, that was the place where TCAN began presenting arts programs in Natick Center. I happen to know that this young girl, whose name is Ava, is now a developmental therapist at the Children's Hospital. And, so it kind of gives you a sense of how long ago that was. But this was TCAN version 1. In those days, the programming at TCAN was very much in a coffee house style. It was a lot of open mic type performances where local singer-songwriters were invited to present their music, and they would gather, and there was also jazz jams and other types of community, real grassroots type of events. The place was amazing. And when it was filled to capacity, which was at about 70 people, it felt pretty crowded. It's amazing to look at a picture like this now in COVID times, thinking, oh my God, imagine a pandemic in this environment. And I always chuckle when I look at this picture, and I don't know if you can see it on your computer screen, but if you look above the exit door, you see fire exit. And it makes me kind of imagine, oh my God, if ever there was an issue with a fire with this kind of configuration, it would have been a crazy situation for everybody to leave. This group who's performing in this picture is a group of Berklee College of Music students and faculty called Dead Cat Bounce. That was the name of the group, Dead Cat Bounce. And presenting those local students was a big part of what TCAN did at that period in time. This was another program from back in that period in the late 90s. On Sunday afternoons, we had a program called Rock on Main Street, where local teenage rock bands used to play. And they would just crank up their guitars and amps and bass, as loud as they could go, and really have an opportunity to wail in a venue that was not their parents' cellar or their garage. So it was a real kick for those kids to be able to play. And TCAN provided them a home for that. So it didn't take long for the folks who were supporting TCAN to be encouraged by the success of the first version of this organization. And so they started looking around for a place to expand. And this happens to a lot of nonprofit, a lot of arts organizations where they look to own their own building and to expand. And so the work began to look for a larger home so that we could present programs on a larger scale. Around this time, again, flashing back to that period of time, you might remember that in 1994, Natick Mall had been completely renovated, right? They pretty much demolished the old Natick Mall, and with tax revenue from this redevelopment, a new town hall and fire station were constructed on Route 135. The facilities that we all are familiar with now. That put this building, which was the central firehouse, up for grabs. And so here you see the firehouse now in somewhat of a state of disrepair. They had replaced the old wooden fire doors with more functional doors so that a fire truck could actually get in and out of this facility. And though you can't see it in this picture, the cupola had deteriorated completely and they had never replaced it. You can see it at the top of the building. This picture was after the building had been closed for use as a working and functional firehouse. So a number of folks started to look at this. This was right around the corner from 31 Main Street. And so folks started to look into the possibility of purchasing this building and then moving TCAN into this facility for programming. There's a lot to that story that I can't cover tonight, but I'm going to show you a few slides skipping along here. There was a lot of dreaming about what it could be like if we owned this building and could renovate it. This was an artist rendering of the firehouse as imagined by a local architect. This could be a drawing done by Michael Collins, our current board chair. I'm not 100% sure, but you could see that they had little tables and parasols out on the sidewalk, people gathering, a place where people could connect. But unfortunately, if you look at the hose drying tower, they still didn't envision that they would be able to replace that cupola. Well, to make a long story short, through a lot of work, a lot of fundraising, this group managed to raise well over $1 million, close to $2 million, to purchase and renovate the facility. This was in the early 2000s. This picture shows, you might recognize John Kerry, who at that point was Senator John Kerry of Massachusetts. Next to him is Representative David Linsky to his right, who at that point was 45 years old and was a new state rep. To his left, I'm not sure who that gentleman is in between John Kerry and the man on the furthest left. That person is the founder, Michael Moran. And then the person on the far right was the head of Natick Center Associates at that point in time in the early 2000s. The reason that these folks are together is they're rounding the corner from Main Street to Summer Street to look at the construction which was taking place of turning that firehouse into the Center for Arts in Natick. Here you see a few more folks, including Jay Ball, who was on the Board of Selectmen. I think Jeff Stearns to the rear, who was also on the board. That could be Joel Barrera in the back, just looking at the construction site. The point I really wanted to make here was that the town of Natick was really supportive of this. And you know, these town leaders were really pioneers in taking the risk on an organization like TCAN to purchase a facility like the firehouse on the promise that they would turn it into something of pride for the whole region. These folks had vision, and we thank them for that. Shortly after the construction was complete, one of these volunteers, Jay Ball, along with Ken Soderholm, a local builder, organized an effort to construct a replica of the original cupola and have it hoisted onto the hose drying tower as part of the restoration of the building, which, you know, is a very romantic idea, a functional idea, but you know, the thought that these volunteers would work together, you know, a large number of them, to build this thing with hammer and nails, go out and seek the donations necessary to get the materials. It's pretty amazing. And that cupola stands today. So now we make another leap. So shortly after opening the firehouse for programs in 2003, now we see the firehouse as it appears today. You can see the cupola is on the top of the hose drying tower, the gorgeous look of this wonderful architecture, the replicas of the fire doors, but inside is a home for arts programming as opposed to fighting fires. So TCAN is an amazing space. It's, you know, it seats about 280, sometimes up to 300, but it's an intimate space. You see the audience here appreciating the performers on stage. This is a folk group called Red Molly. And, you know, the amazing thing here is that the performers can literally reach out and touch the audience. They're that close. And so the power of seeing really great, talented performers this up close and personal is just a transformative, a magical thing. And, you know, I've always considered it part of my role at TCAN to try to eliminate all the barriers between the audience and the artist, so that they get the clarity and purity of the music and the art that the musicians are trying to create. This is a typical ending to a performance at TCAN. The gentleman on the stage with the guitar is Jonathan Edwards. If you remember the song Sunshine Go Away Today from the 60s. So now there are fewer community events, open mic type events. We still support those type of programs, but now we have enough seats to support national touring artists. And I'm not going to use up my time with you showing you a list of all of the performers who've played at TCAN, but if you were to look at the Wikipedia page for TCAN, you'll see hundreds of performers, many of whose names you'll recognize as being among the Grammy Award winners, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame winners, you know, just a great roster of talent who has performed at TCAN. In 2016, we attempted and succeeded in a second renovation, this time for the second floor. And if you haven't been on the second floor of the firehouse, this is the original roof with the wooden you know, beams. And now it has been converted into a beautiful cinema room that seats 120, and we're presenting first run films. Next month, we'll be showing several of the Oscar-nominated films this year, as well as the Oscar-nominated short films. And it's going to be to a limited audience, again, because of COVID restrictions. But people are coming out to the movies, and we really look forward to that time in the future when we can reopen fully. You see the piano to the left. We also present classical music in the setting because the aesthetics of the room are so beautiful, as are the acoustics. So this is a black slide, and this is where I tell you that on March 13th of 2020, TCAN shut its doors because of the COVID pandemic. We are one of thousands of performing arts venues across the country who were forced to close because of the pandemic. It has been a challenging time for us. I'm sure you can imagine. Our program revenue last year in 2020 was less than 5% of what it was in 2019. It has been difficult. We've reduced every expense we possibly could. We've reduced our payroll significantly. The only reason we're still here is because of the generosity of our donors and our sponsors and the state who gave us grant funding. So we have survived. We're not to the finish line yet, but TCAN will continue. We have some plans for moving forward. And so I'm going to give you a little preview of some of the things that we're working on to stay connected to our members and our patrons. And then we're looking forward to making it to the other side when we can reopen fully again. So in December, we held a live stream concert featuring Lori McKenna, who's a Grammy-winning singer-songwriter. This year, she won a Grammy for Best Country Song for the third time in a row, the same award. She and Mark Orelli presented a concert in the space to no one but the technical staff that we recorded and then put out on the internet so that people could enjoy that concert. And we did it as a fundraiser, and it was amazing. We raised over $150,000, which for us was our most successful fundraiser that we've ever had. We are very excited about the prospect of doing live streams as a way to stay connected and a way for artists to be able to perform while we're still constrained in terms of capacity. And we were delighted when two donors stepped up, the Foundation for Metro West and Metro West Subaru right here in Natick, to contribute a total of $50,000 that allowed us to install cameras permanently in the space. So now we've installed cameras in the ceiling grid, and we also have digital lighting equipment and sound equipment, and a digital switcher that is installed upstairs that will allow us to basically capture performances on stage and broadcast them live with a 3-camera shoot, all controlled remotely. So it's very sophisticated. We think about the early days of TCAN and the restoration of the building and those renovations. And most of the changes to TCAN in the last 10 years have been technology. We have completely migrated to not only this live stream capability, but digital sound, digital lighting, a very high-tech ticketing platform. So we're trying to maintain our relevancy, along with other performing arts venues in the state and in the country. So that brings us to one of the other things that we're brainstorming for this year. One of the things about the pandemic is that it's a lot easier to have activities outdoors as opposed to indoors. And so we had the idea of trying to do live music performances outdoors, but we don't have any real estate in Natick Center that would allow that. And we saw issues in trying to do that in conjunction with the high school fields or even Elm Bank in South Natick. Then we reached out to Lookout Farm. Lookout Farm in South Natick, and what we're looking at here is Lookout Farm. If you look at the cluster of buildings in the upper right of this photograph, that is the Lookout Farm facility as you first enter that access road. But when you go further up the road and you see this area with the in the lower left with the circle uh, in that area. That's where last year uh, Lookout Farm started presenting outdoor restaurant service, and they had people seated at picnic tables, socially distanced, in a very fun way that allowed people to enjoy the outdoors, have some good food, have a adult beverage, and socialize a bit. Well, we reached out to the management at Lookout Farm, and they were very open to our idea of collaborating with them to present live music outdoors in conjunction with this restaurant service. We have not received, or haven't even requested yet, approval from the town, so we still have some work to do. But with the recent lifting of restrictions on outdoor music venues that the governor announced, we believe that we can make a go of this. So we are working to finalize the artists that we want to present. We have a strategy for staging and for the sound system. And we're hopeful that we can get the approvals we need from the town in order to move forward and provide something of real fun for the members of our community. So that's what we're working on. I can tell you that we don't have a firm date for opening concerts, because right now the current restrictions prohibit singing indoors, and that makes it really difficult for us to present any of the music acts that we had booked. But we're hopeful that if Massachusetts is successful in getting a large percentage of its population vaccinated, that our numbers will continue to reflect a health situation that will allow us to reopen again. And we can talk about that when the questions come up. So I guess I want to close with just this. TCAN is here because we're fortunate to have the support of a town like Natick. We're definitely lucky to have the support of all of these wonderful volunteers. And the spirit of volunteering is something that really runs deep in our community. We've also been benefited from the fact that we have the support of our neighboring businesses. Natick Pegasus, our cable access channel, helped us to do our live streams before we had our own equipment. The banks and insurance companies in Natick Center sponsor us regularly. Stonegate real estate company. We have the support of our 2,000 members who have contributed so much and stuck with us, even though we weren't able to present programs last year. And then finally, the support of so many musicians and great artists, not only based in Massachusetts, but across the country, who are very committed to this venue and making sure that we continue our programs here. So, I'm filled with love and gratitude for all the help we've received to make TCAN the treasure it is for the community.